Did you know the fossil record is no friend to evolution? Even though the fossil record is often presented as one of the best pieces of evidence for evolution, it's actually a problem for evolution. And a lot of people don't realize there are many modern animals throughout the fossil record. I'm here with Dr. Carl Werner. He has been on a 30-year experiment of traveling around the world, looking at fossil dig sites, going to museums, interviewing experts. So he's going to present with us some of the information that he found about the fossil record. Welcome, Dr. Werner.
Thank you. It's great to be with you and the audience. I'm so glad to be on your podcast because you have such a mix of both evolution believing and creation believing viewers, and that makes me excited. I hate to preach to the choir, and I love to take hard questions. So it's great to be on your podcast, Rebecca.
Great. And I want to mention that Dr. Werner has an amazing video series that has clips from a lot of his interviews, wonderful pictures and information that he got on his journey. And one of the books that I love that he's written is Living Fossils. It has beautiful pictures of fossils and modern animals, and he'll show you a lot of issues related to the fossil record. Today, we're going to be just focusing on the main area is that there are modern fossils throughout all the fossil layers. So thank you, Dr. Werner. Do you want to just give us an introduction to this?
Yeah. And also I want to mention that a lot of the information I'm going to share today is also in the accompanying video to that book called Living Fossils. Now you can get it by streaming. You can rent it for a few bucks by going through our website, and or you can buy the DVD. But a lot of the concepts are from this show. But today we're not doing just the animals that were found that look modern next to the dinosaurs, but we're doing the entire rock column from the Cambrian all the way to the top. And the point I'm making today is, number one, the theory of evolution was overturned in 2024. Number two, part of that being overturned is the fact that modern animals have been found in all of the rock layers, from the lowest, the Cambrian, the Ediacaran before that, all the way to the top, all the way through the dinosaur times to the very top layer, the Holocene. Modern animals have been found, and that totally disrupts the theory of evolution. Before I get started, though, I want to survey your viewers and ask you to type in the chat if you're an evolution believer or creation. Just type in the word evolution or creation. I just would like to know the mix of the viewers, and because I'm going to ask you questions as we go along, if you're an evolutionist or if you're a creationist. I just want to get a sense. So if you'd put in the comments, and I'm going to ask Rebecca to quickly summarize what she sees in the comments, whether the viewers are creationists or evolutionists. And the second thing that I want you to put in the comments is, do you believe that modern animals have been found in every layer? Because this is a bold scientific statement. I don't think anyone in the scientific community knows about it even. A few do. But do you believe that modern animals have been found in every layer from the Cambrian all the way to the top? Or do you think that's a bunch of hogwash? You can just either say, I believe, or it's hogwash, Do you have any comments back yet?
Yeah, right now we just have two responses saying they believe in creation, and yes, modern animals have been found in the layers. But I think as we go on, there may be more responses. So
okay, sounds
continue
good.
on. Yeah.
Sounds good.
So can we talk about why would this be such a problem for evolution to have modern animals at the very bottom of the fossil record?
Well, the theory of evolution says that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, billion, B, and that it started out with a bacteria or a bacterium, small microscopic organism that you can't even see at the bottommost layer. And it slowly changed into a bigger and bigger and bigger animal. And then those animals slowly changed, and through survival of the fittest, beat out the previous animals, and one animal group overcame the other animal group. And you over time, you go from a bacteria to a human at the top layer. That's what the theory of evolution would say. But the theory of creation would say, no, everything was living at the same time and got mixed together in a flood. And so the theory of creation would say we'd expect modern animals to be in all the layers because they were part of this flood that occurred after creation. So it's really disruptive to evolutionists to say that there's modern animals in every layer. And when you point them out, then they start using rescue devices, saying, oh, well, we expected that. Some animals are so well adapted that they didn't need to change. But really, the theory of evolution says that it's survival of the fittest. Animals are always adapting. Animals are always mutating, always evolving to something better. That something better then beats out the previous group and makes them go extinct. And so just superficially, you would expect evolution to be no modern animals at the bottom and all the modern animals are in the top layer or two, the Holocene or the Pliocene. Yeah.
Well, and not only that, but it's also an issue with having complex features and complex organisms at the very bottom, because you've got, really down low trilobites with fantastically complex eyes. And, this should need a lot of time. So it's a problem for their timeline as far as the development, how long these features are supposed to take to develop.
Yes, definitely. And that's the other problem, is that these complex animals suddenly appear. It's called the Cambrian explosion, where you have all the animal groups, the vertebrates, the corals, the sponges, the segmented worms, the arthropods, the echinoderms, all 7 major phyla groups that would represent 99% of all animals suddenly appear in the lowest layers. That's kind of a problem. That's not what evolution says. Evolution said this bacteria slowly changed into a fish, and yet what we find is a fish, fully fish, with gills, heart, lungs, gills, circulatory system, blood vessels, mouth, anus, intestinal tract. Fully formed fish appears in the Cambrian layer, the lowest layer. And they cannot explain how a bacteria got to that fish. That's just stupid. In fact, it's so stupid that what I just said everybody should just turn off the video. That evolution's disproved right there. You should be able to see a bacteria change into a fish. And yet the fish appear in the lower Cambrian, fully formed. A fish, that's very complex. It has vertebrates, it has myotomes, it has, scales, So yeah, this is very problematic. And this is all contributing to why the theory of evolution collapsed. I'm dating it at 2024, 2025, when a lot of this information, plus a lot more, became known.
Wow, great. Well, should I pull up your slides?
Yeah, let's do it. And I'm going to woo you with some of my wife's photographs. Debbie took 300,000 photographs as we traveled around the world the last 30 years. And if there's something beautiful in these slides, you can thank Debbie at some later date. So, they say behind every good podcaster, guest is a good photographer wife. That's what they say. All righty. So there are, just kind of 101 here, there are flat sedimentary rock layers covering all the continents of the world. And you've seen these when you go through the Grand Canyon, when you drive down the highway and there's a rock cut, you see these flat layers. And typically from the top of the flat layer down to the basement granites, it's typically 1 mile of sedimentary layers, 1 mile deep. Like the Grand Canyon is 1 mile deep, and then it goes down. You can see the granites at the bottom, but they're everywhere. In petrified forest, you can see these flat pancake-like layers that without erosion, one after another after another. And you can see them at Dinosaur Provincial Park up in Alberta. It's flat layer on top of flat layer on top of flat layer, sedimentary rocks. And at the Badlands, you can see these. Real here, it's very clear. Up here, it's very clear. And sometimes you have to get very close and examine these, because sometimes there's rock slides, and it prevents you from seeing the flat layer on top of a flat layer, but they're there, and you can prove to yourself that they're there. And here at Joggins Cliff, Nova Scotia, here's a flat layer on top of a flat layer. Now, these are tilted up after tectonic plate movements and things of that nature, but they were flat at one time. And now evolution scientists have assigned formal names to all these layers. And they would call one layer where they find a dinosaur a Jurassic layer. They might find another dinosaur in a different layer. They would call that Triassic. They might find a trilobite way down here at the bottom, and they say, oh, that's a Cambrian layer. And they have assembled all these layers from all over the world into this column called the geological column. This is actually a theoretical, because there's no place on Earth where you can actually see the entire column. You have to, like, for example, this Proterozoic, you have to go to Flinders Range in South Australia to see the Ediacaran layer. And then the Cambrian, the middle Cambrian layer, you'd have to go and take the rocks from Burgess Shale up in Canada, and the lower Cambrian up in China, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of a theoretical reckoning for evolution. And there's 18 layers in all: the Holocene, Pleistocene, Pliocene, et cetera, et cetera. The Cambrian, they've added one more below this. They call it the Ediacaran. So I'll be talking about that one too. But there you go. And the question is how did all these sedimentary rock layers get here? And there's two wildly different, diverse opinions and of how these layers got here. So I'm going to take, my blood sugar is a little bit low. I have diabetes, so I'm going to have to take a drink of sugar here. So excuse the break here. Excuse me. One theory of how these layers got here, let's say the Grand Canyon. How did the Grand Canyon layers get there? They would say these layers were formed by rivers, and then the rivers flooded and they laid down sediment in the overbanks. Lakes at the sediment at the bottom of the lake, and sometimes the lakes would overflow and lay down sediment. Ponds, same thing. Sometimes it would be desert sands, and sometimes it would be inland seas that would come in all the way into the middle of the United States. They would say these seas were just kind of regional. They didn't cover the world. They were just coming up into, cover half the continent or a third of the continent. But that's a theory of evolution. And they would say these layers were laid down over 4.5 billion, that's a B, billion years. And the reason these theories should be so easy to disprove one way or the other is because the other theory is so crazy different. The second theory is the creation flood theory. And it says that the sedimentary rock layers of the world were deposited in 1 year during a total submersion worldwide flood event. 1 year versus 4.5 billion years. Seems like we should be able to figure that out pretty easily by just looking at the evidence. And the creationists would say that the reason you have these layers, the flat sedimentary layers without erosion, is because there was tsunamis bringing waves in. The tsunamis were caused by, earthquakes, which were caused by the splitting of the ocean floors. And each tsunami would come from a different direction and bring in sediments from a different direction. And once the tsunami wave ran out of energy, it would stop. And then the sediments in that wave would settle to the bottom. And then you get one flat layer. And then here you get a different tsunami from a different direction, from different sediments bringing in maybe sand, and it runs out of energy. The sand goes to the bottom. And this was being deposited at a rate of around 14 feet a day to get, if you take 1 mile, 5,280 divided by 365 days, I think it works out to be like 14 feet a day of sediment. And so here are my questions to you and the crowd. And if you want to put your answer in chat, that'd be great, but it's not necessary. If evolution is true, and I'm going to ask this to you too, Rebecca, if evolution is true, how many of the named rock layers, these 18 layers that I just laid out here, should have modern species of animals? Modern species. If evolution is true, and I'm going to ask you, Rebecca, what do you think? If evolution is true, how many of the layers should have modern animals in them?
Well, I would think it's possible that there's maybe a few that have survived and been so physically adapted that they could survive all of that time. But if things are really evolvable, I wouldn't expect to find. I think I would expect to find not many modern in the fossil layers.
But which of the layers would you find the modern animals if evolution was true?
I would find them closer to the top.
Right. It's the Holocene. It's right here. The last layer that would be, and this is how they had this diagram. Never trust a diagram, but they have the mastodon or whatever that is, the Indian arrowheads and all this. So they would say the modern animals would be showing up in the very last two layers. And I might be wrong on this, but I've never encountered a modern species in any of these layers. In other words, they have maybe some animal down here that kind of looks like a starfish, but it's a different genus and species. So the evolutionists would say, no, there's no modern, unless if someone could correct me on this, I'd appreciate it. But they say, no, there's no modern animals down here, no modern species. At the very top, yeah, the last million years or so, yeah, you get some in the Holocene. That's where the modern ones show up. Now,
well, they'll call them living fossils if they're farther down. Like a horseshoe crab or something, they'll say that's a living fossil.
Yeah, but they would also pin you down saying that is not the same animal because it's in a different genus and different species. And they say, it kind of looks like the horseshoe crab, but it's not the modern horseshoe crab because look at the genus and species is different. I'm playing the devil's advocate here.
Oh, really? They'll even say that for the horseshoe crab?
For every animal that looks similar down all the way down the bottom. For every animal in my book, Living Fossils, they'd say, no, those are different animals. Those are not modern animals. They're not modern species. And so that's how an evolutionist thinks. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but that's my general consensus. Now, my second question is to the creationist or even to anybody, even the evolutionists. If creation is true, and in other words, there was a single creation event, less than 10,000 years ago, followed by a worldwide flood. How many of the 18 named rock layers should have modern species of animals? Now, hold on. Don't answer yet. I want to give you some background information. So I want everyone to make an informed decision. I want to put this out visually for you. So if creation and the flood was true, okay, so if there was creation and there was Adam and Eve and, the snake or boa constrictor or whatever in the tree, in the apple tree, this would be like, 7 to 10,000 years ago, whatever number you like. But in the Garden of Eden, there would have been modern animals, Adam and Eve. There would have been the snakes. That's a modern type of animal. There would have been the apple tree, if there was apple tree in the story. And there would have been modern animals like ducks, flamingos, and deer, and there had been pansies and daisies, modern plants. But since, according to this theory, God made everything at once, and some animals went extinct, like the dinosaurs, T-Rex, Apatosaurus, and pterosaurs. Some animals went extinct, but some animals didn't go extinct. So you have animals all living together. Some would later become extinct. Then they get mixed up in Noah's worldwide flood, both the ones that goes extinct and the ones that don't go extinct. And they're basically mixed together like in a snow globe. You have the ducks being mixed with the deer, being mixed with the T-Rex and the Apatosaurus, long-necked sauropod, the pterosaur, and the apple. So that's what the theory of creation/flood says. So now that you know what it's saying, what animals were back then, what animals, if there was a single creation event followed by a worldwide flood, how many of these 18 layers should have modern animals in them? And I'll throw it out to, if the audience wants to answer in chat, but I'll throw it out to you. I'll throw it out to you, Rebecca, too, or you can read answers, whatever.
Well, I've already seen all your videos and read your books, so
Okay.
I'll leave it to Frank. Frank says if creation is true less than 10,000 years ago with a flood less than 5,500 years ago, then all of the fossil layers should have modern animals in them, and creation is true.
And see, when I've given this talk to other groups, that's generally, the audience is pretty uniform on that. They all say that if creation is true, you should have modern animals in every layer. And then we also, just prior to that, we said if evolution is true, really the modern animals should be in the top layers, modern species. So there you go. I just set up a dichotomy for you, and it's a testable theory. And see, this is what science, good science is. Good science makes predictions, and then it goes out and tests those predictions, and either the prediction is true or it's not true. And then you can find out if your theory is correct or not. If it fails, you can rework it and try it again, but you have to go test it. So I just set up this dichotomy: animals, modern animals in every layer, if creation is true, but we've never heard of them. By the way, no scientist knows about this. No, I mean, you can go on the internet. I'm telling you, search this in AI. Are there modern species of animals in the Cambrian? It's going to be no, 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 no. It just go every layer. So the general knowledge is that there is no modern animals in any layer, okay? But we just said for creation, there should be in every layer or pretty close to it. You'd expect them to be. So I need to just pause here, though, and clean up this terminology for you, because this is very important. Pay attention to this. It's very important. The terminology modern versus modern appearing versus modern species. First of all, none of these fossils are modern, because if they're in evolution terms and they're in the dinosaur layer, they're 100 million years old. So that's not modern. That fossil is 100 million years old. And if you believe in creation, it was from the flood. That fossil's not from an animal that lived in 2026. It lived in 4,000 BC or whatever the date is for the flood. So it's not modern, but these fossils are modern appearing. They appear to look just like the modern animals. And that's as good as you can get, because they're not ever going to be modern. Okay. So we're looking for animals that are modern appearing. And then I want to distinguish between modern appearing and modern species. You see, a species is defined as two organisms that can reproduce and produce offspring, and the offspring are also fertile and can produce offspring. So like two dogs would be the same species, Canis familiaris, or two humans would be the same species, Homo sapiens. But you cannot test a fossil with a modern animal or plant, a sassafras leaf fossil, sassafras leaf live, and see if they can reproduce through sexual, reproduction of the flowering plants. You can't do it because one's dead. Okay. So you're going to have to make a decision whether this fossil could be a modern species. There would be no way for you to know exactly. It's just the facts. You can't know because you can't test reproduction, but you can get a pretty good idea, especially when I show you this background information. And this is critical. Pay attention, please. This is one of the most spectacular photographs that you'll ever see, not because it's, in the right color and sharpness, but because of what's on here on this table. I took this at the veterinary school in Columbia, Missouri, and I asked them if I could photograph their modern dog skulls and their skeletons, but did the dog skulls. So these are dog skulls from animals that just died, like 1950, 1960. They identified what it was before they got the bones out of it. And then they labeled each skull as they, prepared the bones. And this is spectacular because it shows the variation within dogs. Now, dogs are all the same species. Canis familiaris. Canis is a genus name. Familiaris is a species. And the binomial name is called Canis familiaris. So we all know that dogs can reproduce, like a Chihuahua can reproduce with a bulldog. And a Chihuahua can reproduce with an Irish Wolfhound. You wouldn't think, but they can. And look at the amount of variation within one species that we know is a species because we historically have tested this. And look at the variation here. It's crazy on how different these skulls are. Like the Chihuahua skull here. By the way, it's very thin skull. These are very thick. But look at his canine tooth. It almost goes straight down. But look at the bulldog tooth. It goes out to the side at 45 degrees. And look at the Irish Wolfhound. It kind of goes straight down. Look at the length of the skull. The Chihuahua's intermediate. The bulldog is kind of short. But the Irish Wolfhound skull is enormously long compared to the other two. And then look at the eyes. The Irish Wolfhound eyes look like they're more on the top of the skull. The bulldog more on the side, and the Chihuahua on the side. Look at the incisors here. These are all stacked close together. These are all spread out, and these look like different animals. Now, imagine if this is like a mental exercise. Imagine if an evolution scientist or a paleontologist had never seen a dog because the dogs went extinct long time ago, long before history was ever recorded. Okay. They never heard of a dog. And let's just say they found these skulls in 20 different dig sites across the world, and each scientist finds just one skull and they don't know what it is. Okay. And the first one, let's say he calls this first one, let's say he just got lucky and he called it Canis familiaris. When this scientist found this skull, the Chihuahua skull, he's going to say, well, this is not Canis familiaris. This is a completely different animal. Yes, it's a carnivore, but no, it's a completely different animal. It's not the genus Canis. It's the genus, I'll make it up, Chihuahua or something like that. And then imagine a scientist over in Asia finding this. He would say, well, this is not Canis familiaris, because look how long and big this thing is, twice as big, and the teeth are in different angles. And he would put it at a different genus also. He would call it Ireland, or whatever. So whatever name you would want to make up for the genus. And so these three would be put in three different genuses, and these three would be given three different species names. And the problem is that they are not different genuses and they're not different species. These are all the same animal. We just have this historical insight of how much variation there is in one species. This is so important. Please pay attention. Now, it's not just dogs. It's every animal and every plant. For example, if you go outside to your sassafras tree, if you have one, you'll notice on the same tree, there's leaves that look like a mitten with the thumb out. There's leaves that look like a tri, three lobes. There's leaves that look like a single lobe, and all kinds of variation. But those aren't different species because they have different shapes. But if you have never seen a sassafras tree, you would assign those all to different genus and species names because you would have no historical record. So the way you deal with these fossils is you have to decide, do the fossils that we find today in these older layers, do they differ from the modern animal or plant that I'm going to show you more than or less than the dog skulls? Because if they look kind of similar, but kind of like the dogs. They're pretty close, but not exactly. Well, if they look closer than the dogs, 3 different dog skulls, then they're the same species, theoretically, but if they look like crazy different, more than these crazy different, like, horns sticking out of their head, or, this one has paws and this one has hooves, then you say, no, that has to be a different genus or species. But you always make your comparison back to these dogs. At least that's what I do. You can do it with oysters and look at the variation within oysters. You can look at the variation within, any animal. Just look at the humans. Some humans have short legs compared to their arms. Others have long legs compared to their arms. Some humans have flat faces. Some humans have prognathic faces. Some humans have large brows. There's so much variation. And if you start thinking that each of these variations allows you to name a different species, you will be able to say, oh no, these are, 100 different genus groups here. And then you've missed the mark. So I want to show you this video it's a clip from our video, Living Fossils. And I just think this will reinforce it, because this is so important for you to understand before we go forward. Here we go.
An animal's binomial scientific name is comprised of a genus name and then a species name. For example, a dog belongs to the genus Canis and the species Familiaris. Its scientific name is Canis familiaris. A species can be defined as a group of animals or plants that can breed and produce fertile offspring. Even within a single species, such as dogs, there are great variations in body size, shape, color, and types of fur. Besides these external differences, there are great variations in the internal anatomy of dogs, such as their skull. For example, the skull of an Irish wolfhound and the skull of a bulldog are tremendously different. Yet these two animals can breed and are the same genus and species.
It's good to understand that.
Yeah, and none of this rest of this talk would make sense if you don't get that concept that there is variation. So here is my problem when I was testing the theory of evolution, is that everywhere I visited, and I visited like 15 of these 18 layers or their fossil collections, I saw modern appearing animals in the fossils. And it really didn't make sense to me. It's like, there are different names, there's different species, different genus groups, but yet they kept bugging me. That looks like a stingray, that looks like a cattail, that looks like whatever, a modern bat or whatever. And so by looking at these collections, and this is where Debbie came in, we photographed these collections. Like, you can photograph the Middle Cambrian Burgess Shale collection at the Smithsonian. It's on display for everybody to see. I think there's maybe 500 or 1,000 fossils on a wall, and you can photograph them. But as we photograph them, I think that looks like a modern animal. In fact, I'm going to show you one from there. And so that would go against evolution, and it would go against their naming system, and it would call into question the scientific prowess of the evolution scientists, and it would call into question their objectivity. See, there's a reason you would want to name a fossil a different animal name and species, and a different genus name species. Number one, you get famous because you found a new genus, even though it's the same animal. Number two, you have supported the idea of evolution. If it looks like a dog and yet you call it a different animal name, then you say that the animals changed over time, even though they didn't. It's the same animal. But if you name it differently, then you get points from your colleagues and get advanced in this field because you're an evolution scientist and they want evidence for evolution. So the fact that I started spotting these and then realized what they were doing with the names, which is coming up, this is condemnation on this scientific field. For example, we were at the petrified forest, and this fossil we saw on the left, and then this shellfish, which is living today, on the right. These look like about the same as two different dogs. Yes, the top is missing here, and yes, it's photographed at a little bit of a different angle, et cetera, et cetera. But these look the same, and I would think these would be the same genus and species, but look, they put them in two different genus groups, Liopiclodes and Babylonium. And here's another layer. This was at Dinosaur Provincial Park in Alberta, Canada. Here's the fossil alligator that they found next to the dinosaur, and here is a modern alligator skull. And you say, do these look the same, as similar as two dog skulls? I would say, heck yes. These don't look like two dog skulls. These look like two bulldog skulls. In other words, they look like the same kind of dog, within the species. Now you'd say, well, how about the nose? Well, this is a fragile nasal septum that gets broken off easily. This part is broken here. There's some variation. It's not exactly the same, but it's within that amount of two dogs. So in my opinion, the modern is alligator mississippiensis. The dinosaur one should have been called that also. But
how old do they say that fossil is?
Evolution scientists, because it's from Alberta, Canada, I'm just going to pull this off the top of my head. Don't hold me to it. Like 72 million years old, because Alberta is in the Cretaceous. Don't hold me to that either. I'm doing this from memory from all these sites. They'd say that's 72 million years old. And yet I say that looks like the same genus and it looks like the same species. And, I'm as objective as you are, as the scientist is. He thinks he's objective. I think I'm objective. And I think mine makes more sense. But you know what? I always thought I was stupid. I was like, the reason you're not seeing why these are different genus and species is, number one, you can't hold the fossil. And number two, you can't do microscopic analysis, really close-up views. There is a reason they called it this, different. And so I gave them pass. I gave them a pass while I was, assembling these ideas in my mind until, and here's another one. Here's a dragonfly near my wife's former home in Louisiana. And it looks like this fossil dragonfly from the Jurassic, supposed to be 154 million years old. And I would have to say, these look like two beagles again, not like two dogs where they're different. They look like two of the exact same, variety of dogs. But again, I gave them credit because I said, well, maybe I just don't have the microscopic view of it.
And again, they're calling them two different genus and
yeah,
species.
Thank you. Yeah. So the modern is called I'm putting all the genus groups in blue. The modern is in the genus Pachydiplax, and the fossil is in the genus Urogamphus. I can't quite read it. I don't have my glasses on. So yeah, totally different genus, which they would say they're totally unrelated, which is bull. That's just bull, So I have a whole book of these from dinosaur layers. But this is a fossil that you could say, I realize, no, I'm not stupid. They're stupid. And this is a fossil that caught my eye, and I was finally able to put this to rest. This fossil was on display, and I think at the Melbourne Museum in Australia. Debbie took the picture, and it looks like a nautilus. And the neat part is they cut the fossil in half. So now I get to see inside. Okay. And they would say this is 150 million years old. It's in the Jurassic layer. And it looks superficially like this shell that I was familiar with all my life that you can buy in Florida for a few bucks, the Nautilus shell, which is, the spiral shell. Now, the Nautilus shell is very interesting. It has these chambers for the Nautilus to put more pressure in or less pressure in so that the Nautilus goes up or down in the water column. If it wants to rise, it makes the pressure less. If it wants to go deeper, it makes the pressure deeper. It does this with a tube, a soft tissue tube called a siphuncle. You can't see the siphuncle, but you can see where it lays. It goes from chamber to chamber to chamber all the way around. And where they didn't quite cut it directly center, you can't see it, but then you can see it again here. Okay, the siphuncle. Now, in this animal, the animal doesn't live in these chambers. The animal lives out here in the body chamber. This is where the heart is, the eyes, the kidneys, the tentacles, the intestine, the mouth, the reproductive organs are all out here. But this is also the most vulnerable part of these shells. I've owned these shells many times, both as a child and as an adult. And this part always seems to break off because it's unsupported with the rib. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times you end up with the shell without the body chamber, but it has to be there because the animal had to have a body, right? It can't not have the body chamber. Okay. So I took this picture, and by the way, you can buy the Nautilus online. You can buy a Nautilus cut in half online, do this yourself. And I laid the Nautilus, this is a modern, next to this one that was in the 150 million year old rock layer. And because the fossil one didn't have the body chamber, I just removed that last segment, okay, to make them equal visually. And I like, wow. Now in the fossil, you actually see the siphuncle. This is a soft tissue tube that's going from chamber to chamber to chamber where it allows them to go up and down. And now look at the anatomy here. These curved chambers, they are very peculiar shape, and they match up one for one. And this is incredible. And it goes all the way around to here, and this goes all the way around to here. They both have the siphuncle. And I think, well, that one is definitely less different than two dogs. In fact, I would say these are, I hate to use the word, but nearly exactly the same. But watch this. And this should make everybody that's an evolutionist nauseated. What I'm going to show you. This should make you just completely want to puke. The Nautilus is called Nautilus pompilius. This is the genus Nautilus. This is a species, Nautilus pompilius. The binomial name is Nautilus pompilius. If you found this fossil in wherever they found it, but it's on display in Australia. If you found this fossil and you examined the modern, what would you call this fossil? I'm going to ask you and your audience, what would you call the fossil, genus and species?
Nautilus pompilius.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
I hope the audience is agreeing there in the comments section, because to me, you have no other really choice. I mean, if you can't call those the same animal, but watch what they did. They called the fossil Cenoceros lineatus. They put it in a different genus group, meaning it's totally unrelated. And see, if you didn't do the work, which I just did for you, and collect the fossils, photographs of the fossils and the modern, you would think that evolution occurred if you just looked at the names. Oh, back then it was Cenoceros lineatus, but now we have Nautilus pompilius. If you didn't have the picture right in front of you. But if I provide the picture and you'd say, no, this is really bad. And that's when I realized that's what they've been doing through the whole geologic column.
Okay, now I'm saving most comments and questions to the end, but I thought this was perfect to put in here. Nestlig says, but this proves my point that you can't just eyeball a fossil and say this looks just like a modern alligator since, oh, okay, this is for the alligator one. I don't know why it's coming in now, but so anyway, never mind. Okay. I'm sorry, I should have read
But
the entire comment.
well,
But
no
you
worries.
got the point though. He's saying like the alligator one you showed, you know, you can't just examine the
But in fact, that is how evolution scientists, all scientists, assign a name. They just look at it, they examine it from every perspective they can, and then they make a call on it. Everybody has to make their own call. But keeping in mind the variation species of the dogs, the sassafras trees, the oysters, and all these animals, that, because you could rename every one of those. But here, look at this example. This speaks volumes on how they're thinking. This guy got credit because he found a new genus of nautiluses, and he promoted evolution, and he probably got a raise, or he got advanced in his career. If he had named it this, he would have been called out, probably. I don't know. Which layers have modern appearing animals? Remember, we predicted evolution says mostly at the top, and creation says all the layers. And I'm just going to tell you all. And now you would say, well, Carl, you're full of bull. What do you mean all? You didn't show us all the layers. I said, well, this is what I'm going to do. This is what this talk is about. I'm going to show you a modern animal from every layer. Are you ready? Are you excited?
I'm ready. Yes.
Get ready for 30 years of my life, Oh gosh. Okay. This fossil was found in the Ediacaran layer. Ediacaran, by the way, is the layer right below the Cambrian. They don't have it labeled here, but this should be labeled Ediacaran. The top part of it, Ediacaran. This fossil, Debbie photographed in South Australia Museum. It was found in Flinders Range in Australia in the layer that was said Ediacaran, which is more than 542 million years, whatever it is this week. And this is not a tiny little fossil. It's 2.5 feet tall, and it's in the lowest layer, and it's a sophisticated animal. It's beautiful, and it looks like the modern sea pen. See, this sea pen I filmed at, I think, the Vancouver Aquarium, one of those aquariums out on the West Coast. And if you'll notice, they both have a rachis. They both have the leaves. They both have the peduncle. Now, it might be in slightly, this can be squashed down depending on what's going on with the creature at that particular second. But I would have to say these two look more similar than two dogs by eyeing them. And good enough. That would be a modern animal in the lowest layer. And people say they don't exist. And by the way, they renamed every animal I'm going to show you, it's totally different genus and species they renamed them all, but that's not the point. The point is that that's a modern appearing animal in the lowest layer. You ready for the next layer up?
Wait, I want to ask a question about this because someone complained about this, that fossil sea pin you're showing is huge and the modern one is so small. So do you have a response to that?
I don't know. Well, first of all, the Great Dane versus the Chihuahua, the same species. Second of all, the huge ones start out small, they have to get huge. And number three, I don't know how big the sea pens get modern, but that's not enough to put it in a different genus. Like different genus, like it's totally unrelated. So no, size would not matter. It's a valid question. I think it's a good question, but I don't think that's enough to say that it couldn't reproduce. The question is could these two animals theoretically in your mind reproduce? And I say, heck yeah, So here we go.
Right. And in addition to that, if for those who want to complain about that, what is your suggestion? Are you suggesting these two things that look very similar, I would say almost exactly alike, evolved separately? So did this, evolve independently? There's issues with thinking that this is not the same organism.
If you believe
And
in evolution, if you believe in evolution.
right, yeah, if you
Uh-huh.
believe in evolution. And also because the we have lots of enormous species that lived right in the fossil layers, we have a lot of bigger animals that are like bigger versions of what we see today.
Yeah, it could be environmental. It could have had a better environment back then. Could have been warmer seas or whatever with more nutrients, and could have been a different size. But that still does not. That would be like a 7-foot man can't be the same species as a 4.5-foot man, and that's not true. It has to be a bigger difference than that. Now, the next one is very personal to me. Very personal. It's the Cambrian one. So here we go. Debbie and I were filming for Living Fossils in the Caribbean at St. Thomas Island, and we were filming off of a sailboat. And we both got into the boat, and Debbie, you should put this full screen right now, Rebecca. Put the picture full screen so they can see her good. Debbie came out of the water, and she was not happy. Now, Debbie is a gorgeous woman, and she normally is very chipper and smiling. And I realized this is not going good. What's the matter? She said, I got stung. And I said, what do you mean you got stung? She says, I was snorkeling on the surface and something stung me right above my snorkel, right above my upper lip. I don't know if you can see how it's swollen there, right here, like where
Yes.
a man's mustache should be. And she was not happy. And my wife has a very low threshold for not being and not enjoying things sometimes when things get a little rough. And I said, well, what stung you? And we talked to the dive master, and they suggested and showed her this picture. And yeah, that was it. It's this bristleworm that lives down there in the Caribbean. This bristleworm, it's about an inch or two long, and it doesn't look like much, but each one of those white little things is a stinger. And it went right across her above her snorkel. And she got stung. And so she was mad. So fast forward, then I go to the Smithsonian to photograph the 1,000 or 500 fossils from the Cambrian layer from Burgess Shell that's on display at the Smithsonian. And this is what the display looks like. It has all three of these things in the display. It has the actual fossil. You can, see it right there. It has their picture of the actual fossil set next to it. And then it has their scientific drawing based on looking at the fossil under a microscope, what they think it looks like. Now, this is the second lowest layer, the Cambrian. It's supposed to be 500 million years old. And there's not supposed to be any modern species of animals back then. And when you put Debbie's bristleworm next to this Cambrian bristleworm, I ask you, do these look more different than the Irish Wolfhound and the Bulldog? And I would have to say no. And I'd say it could also be the same, type of dog. It could be two bulldogs as far as I can see. And there's no way for sure, but it's a strong case that modern animals, modern looking animals, modern species of animals lived in this layer and were present in all these layers. I'm going to work my way up this column here. I'm not going to take a long time here. I'm going to start going faster. Here's an Ordovician sea star, and here's a modern sea star, given totally different genus and species names. Here's a Silurian level sea star with a double row of the ampullae. And then here's the fossil, same thing, the double row of ampullae. Here is a brittle star that was photographed off the coast of Hawaii, not by me. And here is a fossil brittle star. Now, the colors aren't preserved in fossils generally, so you have to ignore the color, but gee, that looks like a modern brittle star.
And now they wouldn't even call these living fossils because they're giving them different names. So for them, the evolutionists, they're saying they're totally different animals.
No, they might say that those are living fossils, but they would say they're not the same genus or species.
I see. Mhm.
This next footage is incredible, and many persons would give their eye teeth for this footage I just showed you here. You know, when I was a kid, we had fossil crinoid rings in our sidewalk in front of my parents' house. And I always thought the crinoid rings were from an ancient extinct animal. Okay. Never thought that this animal is alive today. And Debbie and I were walking along the coast of New Zealand, and look what had washed up on the shore overnight. It was a stem crinoid, a whole bunch of them. And we were able to film this, and you can see how similar the stem part is. And the crinoids are either 5, 10, 15, or multiples of 5. And this might not be the exact match. This might be a bulldog to a chihuahua or a bulldog, but it looks like a modern animal. And I would have to call that a modern appearing animal in the Mississippi layer. Here's a starfish from the Pennsylvanian layer, and here's a starfish from the modern. Here is a modern lungfish from the Permian layer, and this is from the Carnegie Museum. They're drawing based on their fossils of the lungfish that was found in the Permian layer. And their drawing looks like a modern lungfish. Of course, they give them 2 different genus and species names. And here's that fossil I showed you before from the Triassic. Here's a Jurassic shovel-nosed ray and a modern shovel-nosed ray that was just caught off the coast of California. Here is it's a sea urchin, but they call it a sea biscuit. And you're like, which one's modern? Okay, this one's the modern one, and this one's the fossil one. You can't, I mean, seriously, you have to like, which is real and which is fossil, you know? These look so similar, detail by detail. Of course, they're given different genus and species names. Trumpetfish in the Paleocene, Eocene sand dollars, walnuts in the Oligocene, frog in the Miocene, sand dollar in the Pliocene, coral in the Pleistocene, and Holocene layers. So there's modern appearing animals in every named rock layer from this Holocene down to the Ediacaran, and it's only predicted by the flood model. That's not predicted. It's not thought to be what you would expect for evolution model. And that enough should make you question evolution. And it should also, if you're an evolution believer, it's like, why haven't we been told the truth about this? I still believe in evolution, but why did you withhold that information? You should have at least told me these issues before I made a decision. I would be stomping mad that I was duped by this, because I was duped when I was in college about evolution, and my professor told me about Haeckel's embryos, and I believed it. Once I found out, I was just mad. Like, how dare you do that to me, you know? So that's the first part of this, and I would encourage everybody in the audience to watch the video series of our series. It's called Evolution: The Grand Experiment. There's 8 videos. You can get these by DVD or streaming. And these are knock your socks off videos. They're all shot on location on like 6 continents and at the dig sites themselves, and with the evolution scientists giving the interviews and telling you the facts of the case. And then you get to see the actual fossils, the actual dig sites, and then why evolution doesn't work. If you want to get them through for streaming, you get those through our website, thegrandexperiment.com. And then I would encourage everybody out there, whether you're evolutionist or creationist, to read our entire book series. It's these books are about 300 pages long, all color photographs, like 900 photos per book. And they only take about 2.5 hours to read, maybe 3 hours. And you just burn through them in one a week or one a day or whatever you want to do. But if you haven't read these, honestly, I think you're behind. And it's like, you got to catch up to us, because the ball is rolling down the hill right now. And, you know, evolution just got creamed and the world hasn't caught up. And I want you to catch up to us, what we know so far. So,
and I want to say, because you kind of flew so fast through those layers, especially the dinosaur layers, showing the modern animals. So you didn't show many for that. You showed one of each. But I want to tell people like what the experiment was if you watch the video series, it's looking at the dinosaur layers, looking at all the different types of animals in the dinosaur layers. And Dr. Werner starts out with like, hey, I would expect if evolution is not true, if creation is true, I would expect to find other reptiles in the modern reptiles in the dinosaur layers. I'd expect to find modern amphibians. I'd expect to find modern birds. I'd expect to find modern mammals. And so you go through and you talk about all the animals and show all the different types of animals that are found in those dinosaur layers that are not shown when you go to the museums. When you go to the museums, you get, oh, this world of the dinosaurs. You see pictures of the world of the dinosaurs, and you never see modern animals in there. So you really show that. So I want to say for people who felt like we flew through this and you didn't feel like there was enough modern animals shown in those upper layers, or even in the Mesozoic, the dinosaur layers, there is plenty more. There's so many more, and of all the different categories. So do you want to say anything else about that, Dr. Werner?
Yeah, so that's right. And so like I showed you one fossil from the Jurassic, I think, but there's hundreds of modern animals in the Jurassic layer. I showed you one from the Eocene, but there's hundreds. I just couldn't show you hundreds. I just showed you one. This book here that Rebecca's talking about is called Living Fossils. It's the whole book is a side-by-side comparison of a fossil next to the modern animal. It's page after page after page after page. And I just thought I would just read you so that this doesn't get lost, what modern appearing animals they found with the dinosaurs. This is in the summary page of this book. As far as the vertebrates that they found with the dinosaurs, they found all three groups of fish living today. They found both major amphibian groups living today. They found all four reptile orders living today. Most or all bird orders living today, and all three types of mammals living today. And that was the vertebrates. So they found the fish, the amphibians, the reptiles, the birds, and the mammals. In the echinoderms, they found all five major classes of echinoderms living today. I found starfish, modern appearing starfish, brittle stars, sea urchins, sea cucumbers, and crinoids. And then for the arthropods that were found in the dinosaur layers, I found all of the major types of aquatic arthropods living today, like crayfish, lobsters, and crabs, all the major insect orders living today, all four major arachnid or spider orders living today, and both major myriapod classes living today. We found insects, shrimp, crayfish, lobsters, crabs, spiders, scorpions, centipedes, and millipedes. Besides that, the fourth phylum, the mollusks, we found all five major shellfish classes living today with the dinosaurs, and they look the same: oysters, clams, scallops, mussels, snails, nautilus, tusk shells, sea creoles. As far as the annelids or the segmented worms, we found both major classes of annelids living today: earthworms and tube worms. As far as the sponges, we found all three classes of sponges living today. That's the glass sponges, Desmos sponges, and bony sponges. As far as the corals, we found both hard and soft corals living today, sea pens, humpback coral. And that's just the animals. Now I hate to belabor this, but it is important that I fill this out for you. Now, as far as the plants that were found next to the dinosaurs, modern appearing plants where you can't really tell the difference between them. As far as the flowering plants, that's the Magnolia phyta division of plants. We found chestnut, oak, sassafras, poplar, walnut, ash, viburnum, magnolia, poppy, rhododendron, lily pad, sweet gum, soapberry, bay, everglanes, palm. As far as the cone trees, we found pine trees, sequoia, redwood, bald cypress, and cook pine next to the dinosaurs. As far as the spore farming plants, we found modern appearing tree ferns, sensitive ferns, wood ferns, mosquito ferns, shield ferns, and horsetail. As far as the cycads, we found, yes, the cycads and the kuntis. For the ginkgos, we found the ginkgos. For the vascular mosses, we found the club moss. And for the avascular moss, the peat moss. So, and I just stopped after whatever 250 or whatever animals and plants are in here. It's like, okay, I can't just make a 1,000-page book. The point has been made. They found all these modern animals just as predicted by creation and just as not predicted by evolution. So yeah, it's not just one animal in each layer like I just went through fast. Some of these layers have hundreds of modern animals in them, and they're supposed to be 50, 100 million years old.
Yeah, and there's a point you wanted to make about extinction and how that's actually what characterizes the fossil record.
Yeah, this is a stumbling block for the creationist and actually the evolutionist. They walk in a museum and they see a dinosaur and they say, wow, that's crazy animal. Look how big he is. Look how big his teeth is. There's no dinosaurs living today. There's no T-Rex today. That means that animals changed. And that means that evolution occurred. But that's not true. That's extinction of the dinosaurs. Extinction has nothing to do with evolution or creation. Extinction is this extinction. The animal went extinct. The reason those dinosaurs look so different to you is because they didn't put all the modern animals and plants that were found next to the dinosaur in the same display. That dinosaur would not make you think of evolution if they had put the duck that they had found next to the dinosaur. Can you imagine if they had a duck on the back of T-Rex? But they found ducks in the layer with T-Rex. Can you imagine if they had a boa constrictor wrapped around, the Triceratops leg? Yes, they found boa constrictors next to Triceratops. And the list, that list I just gave you through, if they had a sassafras tree next to the dinosaur. The problem is they leave out the modern appearing animals to create the illusion of evolution and extinction, but it's just extinction and then some trickery on their part by not putting the modern animals on the display that should be in the display. Yeah.
Nestleg brought up this question earlier. And so he says, can you go back to Albert Shamsa and let Werner know that it is closer to caimans, not alligators. And one trait that distinguishes caimans from alligators is the bony septum. Do you want to respond to that?
I would not consider, and I'm sure that is his name Nestle, did you say?
Nestleg. That's how I'm sure that's not his real name. That's just
okay. But Nestleg, I'm sure you know more about caimans than I do. There's no question you would know more than I do about caimans. And maybe the fossil it should not be compared to a alligator, but to a caiman. But if there is a better match than what I just showed you, then that again suggests that it's a modern appearing animal. You could say it'd be better to match it up to a caiman. Fine. It just makes the point even more strong. But I don't think you need to. I would like to see a caiman skull next to those two, and I'll have to work on that. Or if you could email that if you can send me some pictures through my website of some caimans, I would be very much appreciative because, I'm just one guy. I don't know everything. I know about this much. You know about this much. Rebecca knows about that much, and together we know about that much, but nobody knows all this stuff. So please, let's flesh this out. Now, Rebecca, I was thinking that we could just cut it off here, or we could double this lecture and I could prove that there was a flood. We just proved that evolution didn't occur, but I could prove that there was a flood. I don't know if that interests you. I personally think it's too much in one lecture, that we should, limit it to one topic per lecture. But I'm socially retarded. I don't know what most people think, so I'm going to leave it up to the group. If they want to hear it, or you, Rebecca, you could kind of guide the process, what you think your audience can stomach. But this was originally part of a three segment lecture. And that was basically the first half. I could do the second half, which proves a worldwide flood in the most simple terms. It's so simple, it's stupid simple. And, or we could do that another day.
Well, I like that. I've got time and energy for it, but I do want to let you respond to some of the questions first, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So on this presentation. So Shaman Watch says, hi, Rebecca, how does the fossil record make sense based on a 6,000-year-old planet and a global deluge?
Well, the fossil record actually makes more sense for the deluge than millions and billions of years. Number one, here's fact number one. A fossil can form in less than 100 years. And you know that because sometimes there's these caves, and you can actually leave a hat in a cave, and that hat will become, encrusted with limestone. And there's been other modern objects left in caves with a dripping limestone, and they became fossilized. And there's been many, many examples of modern humans fossilized, and yet they're just hundreds of years old. And you can read Herdlicka's book and see my volume 3 to see that. So just because something's fossilized doesn't make it millions of years. Things can fossilize in very short order. In fact, there's a creation scientist that has this device where he can fossilize an animal or plant in days by putting it under pressure. And I don't want to repeat his work because I don't know it well enough, but he takes, a modern leaf or a modern frog and puts it in this pressure device. And for all intents and purposes, it looks like a fossil. So between the caves and that device and the humans, fossils can form rapidly. Number two is there should be very few fossils on the planet. Very few fossils on the planet. And here's why. When you see a deer get killed on the side of the road, if you go back every day driving to work, you see it. Well, one day he's full, and next week he's kind of crumbled, and next week is kind of spread out. And then, within about a month, he's gone. Maybe 2 months, maybe 4 months, but they just don't last. And the animals, when they die, don't turn into fossils. They just disintegrate because the air gets to them, the bacteria do, the rodents eat the bones, et cetera, et cetera. So really, when an animal dies, it should not fossilize. The only way an animal can fossilize is if it's rapidly buried in totality. So like you could take a sassafras leaf and put it on the bottom of a body of water, cover it up immediately and seal it, and then drain out the water. And then that water, as it's percolating through the leaf, would put the elements into the natural material and exchange natural for elements and turn it into a fossil sassafras leaf. So the fact that there is 1 billion fossils collected, that's 1,000 museums with 1 million fossils in each museum, that's documented in book 1. There's 1 billion fossils collected, and there are, and this is what evolution say, trillions of fossils out there. And fossils can form rapidly, and they require total being covered up rapidly. That sounds like the worldwide flood. And it sounds like it'd be 6,000 years ago, as well as 100 million years ago. How do you get, like up at Dinosaur Provincial Park, they had 10,000 dinosaurs get buried in a river flood. How do you get 10,000 dinosaurs to get buried totally so they're all preserved? I mean, how do you could drown them, but how do you cover up 10,000 dinosaurs? Or like at Petrified Forest, 100,000 fossilized trees, over 100,000 acres. And these trees are rapidly buried completely and turn into fossil. How do you bury 100,000 100,000 trees and make them fossils? That's impossible with a river in flood. No, it's very possible though if it's tsunami waves, death and covering up and rapid deposition of sediment at 14 feet a day. So actually it makes more sense for the flood than evolution. It's hard to imagine that a fossil can form rapidly, but these little anecdotes about fossils in caves, modern humans, where they shouldn't be fossilized, show us that fossilization does not tell you the age of how old the animal is.
Yeah, and I want to also mention that let's challenge the millions of years of the ages of these fossils. We're finding dinosaurs, we're finding soft tissue, nerves in dinosaur fossils. And I just saw this 2 days ago in Nature. This just came out. Mummified early Permian reptile.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're going to love this. I'm about to make a video on this because this is amazing.
Oh
So they found enough of the chest material to be able to tell that this Permian reptile, so this is somewhere between 250 million.
Older than dinosaurs.
Yeah, 250 million to 300 million years old. And it has enough preserved that they can tell this reptile breathed like a modern reptile. So they're looking for a transition from land to water. How did these,
beautiful
breathing systems develop? And what they found is it breathes like a modern reptile. So are these millions of years old? Can that tissue last for millions of years? There's no explanation. There's no scientific explanation for that right now, how you're preserving these biological tissues for that long. So again, that's another good reason to believe that's not actually 250 million years old. That fossil is much younger.
Yeah, and Shaman Watch, we interviewed out at Dinosaur National Monument, and the site paleontologist said that they found this dinosaur skull, that was only about 70% fossil, 30% natural bone. Well, how does that work? Because that's the reverse of your question. How does that work where you have a dinosaur skull that's not fossilized? And then to Rebecca's point, you can take these dinosaur bones and break them and look at them under a dissecting microscope, and you find blood vessels that you can tease, and they're still flexible blood vessels and blood cells and nerve cells and collagen, all these. How does that work with millions of years? That doesn't. It sounds like a recent flood event, a recent burial. So really, honestly, guys, if you believe in evolution, you better just step back and take a breath, because it is over. It collapsed this decade, and all this stuff is just coming to the surface. It's really amazing. We're living through one of these Galileo times. We're living through one of these Copernicus times. We're living during one of these Pasteur times. When one of the big theories are getting knocked off. You would love to be living during that time. And during that time, when a big theory is being picked off, there's great confusion, but somebody comes in with clarity and provides a very simple answer. And they're like, oh, I guess I guess the Earth isn't the center of the universe and the center of our solar system. I guess the sun is. Yeah.
Well, it's amazing actually how few people have heard of some of this stuff about the dinosaur bones having blood vessels and things, because in fact, I went to work with Mary Schweitzer's work and her articles showing the blood vessels. I went around to my coworkers and I'm like, do you know about this? And nobody has heard of this. Only people who follow the creationist circles know about this. This is not, I haven't seen anything in the regular news about this mummified Permian reptile.
Right. It should be in the news. That should be in the news.
But it doesn't support evolution. So that's the problem. And that's why the news. So I have to disagree with you a little bit on this, Dr. Werner. I think evolution has been overturned scientifically for 100 years. But the problem is it persists because it's a religious theory that people rely on. I
can't disagree with you that if you saw the evidence for 100 years ago that evolution was overturned, I can't disagree with you. For me, it happened when I got the last pieces and I could demonstrate it to a crowd of scientists and walk them through the entire theory, including human evolution. And these other problems. So for me, it was 2024. But I would not have a problem if somebody said, no, the evolution was never true or it was disproved in 1901. I don't have a problem with that at all. But for me, I'm waiting for an invite from Harvard. Hello, it's Carl Werner. You can invite me, and I'll make this presentation to your greatest scientists. And I just need 2 or 3 hours, and I'll just walk you through it, and I'll show you how it was totally disproved.
Yep.
Every bit of it.
And I'll put up a couple more comments, and then we'll get to your next part of your presentation.
Go ahead.
I'll respond to this one while you get up. So Occam's Barber says, dollars to donuts. I bet nobody once mentions stabilizing selection. Let me tell you, the theory of evolution has so many different types of selection. It's really amazing how much selection can do in their theory. And, so it's just, no matter what we find, evolution will make up a word to make it okay. And this is exactly what Jacob says here. He says, if it changes its evolution, if it doesn't change its evolution, all hail mighty evolution. And this is exactly what you'll find with evolution. It does not matter what we find. It will always be evolution. So thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
But, it doesn't, this displays why evolution is problematic as a supposedly scientific theory, because it doesn't, and I think you mentioned this before, Dr. Werner, there's no null hypothesis when they're going through this. They've assumed evolution is true, and that's what they work with. There's no rigorous testing of this theory. It's all under the assumption that evolution is true. And that's why we have a hard time getting any admissions when there's contradictions to the theory.
Yep. I want to just take just a minute before I start my talk. And I want to bring up a scientific principle that might help people. It's a little bit of a story, and it's going to apply to the next presentation I have. It's called Occam's razor, or the rule of parsimony. I don't know if everybody's heard of this or not heard of this, but Occam's razor says that the simplest explanation for a series of phenomena is generally the correct explanation. And here would be an example of it. I don't know if you know that I'm a retired physician, but let's just say I have a patient that got admitted to the hospital, and the patient has pneumonia and he's in septic shock. Okay. And I send my young medical student into the room, which I've done this, all my career, and say, go examine a patient. I don't tell the medical student what the patient has. Go examine a patient and make up your mind and tell me what you think the diagnosis is and what we should do. And so if the medical student comes out and I say, well, what do you think he has? And he says, well, he has fever. He has shortness of breath. He has a cough. He has chest pain when he breathes. That's called pleurisy. And he has low blood pressure. I think what's going on is the fever was brought on because he took an aspirin overdose. If you take an aspirin overdose, you get high fever from that. I think he had an aspirin overdose. And then I think that his low blood pressure, he also overdosed on blood pressure pills. And that's why his blood pressure's low. Now, as far as the pain with breathing, that pleurisy pain, I think he has a blood clot in his lung. And then for the shortness of breath, I think he's developed emphysema kind of rapidly. Just he didn't know he had it, and all of a sudden he has, emphysema. So in other words, for this patient, your diagnosis, you have to have this, and this is. I said, he has pneumonia. And it's just so simple. He has one diagnosis that explains everything. The pneumonia would explain the fever, the low blood pressure, the pain with breathing, and the shortness of breath, et cetera, et cetera. That's called Occam's razor. And that is also a principle of what I'm going to show you here. And also to his question where he's bringing up like rescue hypothesis. Well, how about this rescue hypothesis? That's just a hypothesis to explain the lack of data. And so if you just say one word, flood, it's going to explain everything, and creation, it's going to explain everything. And I would like to show that to you as soon as you're finished with your last question, and then we'll go on to that.
Yeah, and this actually goes along with that. Truth is Beautiful says, Dr. Carl Werner, I can see how your work can be consistent with ecological zonation, but do you reject the use of the geologic column by Dr. Carey and Dr. Snelling?
To be honest with you, I know who Dr. Snelling is, and I don't know their reads on it. And I have a lot of problems with the geological column, but I understand why people believe it. But I will pass on that question because I just, here's a problem. I need to go finish up I'm going to do a book on the geological column, and I haven't done my interviews, but I could sit here and tell you like 15 minutes of problems with the geological column. And so I have problems with it. I know a lot of creationists believe in it, and I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying whatever, but I can't comment on your question.
Yeah, and there are various creation models. So, we don't have all the information about everything. These are ongoing searches for truth. So there are various models. So if you disagree with something Carl Werner's saying, you might agree with somebody else.
Absolutely. And you should disagree with what I'm saying, because I have only some knowledge. You should be skeptical of everything I say and every other scientist.
Thank you. Okay. So is this the same slide set we're using?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I am going to show you that the flood is the explanation for these layers, not millions of years. And here's a question to your audience, if you'd answer it in the chat, and Rebecca too. We already know about these 18 layers. I explained these to you. This is supposed to be 500 million years old, and this is supposed to be, 10,000 years old, and they're supposed to be laid down over 4 billion years or whatever, or 600 million years, depending which set of layers you include. Here's my question, just theoretical. If there was a worldwide flood, like a Noah's flood, how many of the 18 named rock layers, Holocene, Pleistocene, should have saltwater creatures? And before you answer, I want to give you this illustration that if there was a creation, and it was God created the duck, the snake, the nautilus, and these were then mixed up in a flood, the saltwater creatures would be brought in from the oceans into the middle of the continents, and you would have a mixing of saltwater creatures with land animals and freshwater creatures. It would just be one big snow globe mixing in the Noah's flood. So my question then is, how many of the 18 named rock layers, just theoretically, if you're thinking about this yourself, I want you to formulate a theory, should have saltwater creatures? They call saltwater creatures marine creatures. And do you see anything in chat there, Rebecca, or you could answer that?
Nobody has answered this so far. Oh, wait. Okay. Frank did. He says if there was a worldwide flood, all rock layers should have saltwater creatures. And there was a worldwide flood.
Thank you, Frank. Listen, I've given this talk to groups, and hundreds of people respond, and they basically all shut out all layers. That's what, and that would just be my logic. If there was saltwater mixing and putting these layers down, there should be saltwaters in most or all of them, and that would be what I would expect. And a creation, if I asked an evolutionist, of those 18 layers, how many layers should have saltwater creatures in them of the 18 layers? And if someone doesn't answer in chat, I think an evolutionist would say, well, gosh, during the Ediacaran and the Cambrian, that was the inland seas. And then there was an inland sea during the dinosaur time. And then periodically there would be an ocean coming up, creeping up. And so not all of them for sure, but just some of them would have saltwater creatures, but not all. So the evolution prediction would be some, but the creation model would say all. Okay, that's your hypothesis, and that's your dichotomy. So I'm going to show you saltwater creatures in every layer. Some of these will be repeats because they're saltwater creatures, but here we go. The lowest layer, Ediacaran, this is a sea pen. That's a saltwater creature. The next layer up is a Cambrian. This is a sponge. Sponges are saltwater creatures in the ocean. That was found in the Cambrian layer. This is a crinoid. Crinoids live in the ocean today, really deep, these stem ones, and that was found in the Ordovician. Here is a hard coral. Hard corals are in the oceans today. This hard coral was found in this Silurian layer. Here's a Devonian starfish. They're saltwater. Here's a Mississippian layer coral. Here is a shark in the Pennsylvanian layer. Here is a fossil shellfish, saltwater from the Permian layer. This is a Triassic saltwater snail, a Jurassic saltwater ray, a saltwater sea urchin, a saltwater shark, a saltwater sand dollar, a saltwater shark, a saltwater crab, a saltwater sand dollar, a saltwater coral, and saltwater shells. So the reality is that all of the layers have saltwater creatures, and this is a trade secret of paleontology. This should be, everyone should be taught this in first grade, but nobody knows this.
Well, I think the pushback that I've heard on this is that, but we find a lot of places where there's no, like, there will be a lot of like land animals together, and they won't have any marine fossils with them. So
Yeah.
if we had a flood, then wouldn't we see all the marine fossils and everything mixed together?
No, and that wasn't our hypothesis. And I want to back you up to your hypothesis. The hypothesis was, of these 18 layers, how many should have saltwater creatures? And the answer was 18, all of them. Now, yes, you might find a pocket of animals that don't have saltwater creatures in it, but over here, there's a pocket of animals that have salt, freshwater, and land animals all mixed together. But so they shouldn't change the hypothesis. The hypothesis was how many layers, and the answer is all, and that is the reality of it, you know?
Right. And I want to point out too that the lower layers of the fossil record are ocean animals, right? And so this makes sense if you think about a flood and sediments getting deposited, what would be deposited. Now, the evolution story will tell you that's because things developed in the ocean and then they crawled up onto land. I've already done tons of stuff on how hard it would be to make all those changes and get up out of the water and onto land. But the point is that this actually, you don't have to see it through the evolution lens. You can see it through the lens of, yeah, the ocean sediments would have the marine fossils, and those would naturally be lower down than the land animals.
And there's saltwater creatures all the way to the top, all the way to the top. So, and here's the bigger problem. I mean, I basically just destroyed evolution with this one slide series that I just showed you, because there shouldn't be saltwater creatures in every layer. But here's the bigger problem, and I want to advance the slides. Here's those 18 fossils I just showed you. You see, I don't know if you recognize them here. Maybe you ought to put the full screen on for the slides so they can see them full screen, Rebecca. But I just showed you these 18 fossils that are saltwater, but where did they come from? Where were they found? Like this Triassic saltwater snail was found out at petrified forest. But petrified forest, I'm just going to make this up, I don't have the number in front of me, we'll say is 600 feet above sea level. And that's one layer. Now, here's a different layer. This Mississippian near Illinois, this coral saltwater in the Mississippian layer was found in Illinois, and yet that's like 800 feet above sea level. And this Permian fossil here was found above sea level. And this crab down from Mississippi, the Mississippi petrified forest, that's from the Miocene layer. So these layers, like here's the Ediacaran fossil, saltwater, that's probably 1,000 feet above sea level. I have to look these all up, but you get the idea. These are found in the middle of the continent. And this is not a problem for evolution, for creation, because we said the saltwater creatures would be brought in. That's expected. But for the evolution scientists, this is a disaster. And let me explain this. And just remember the rule of parsimony. If you have saltwater animals in every layer, all 18 layers, and they're high up, 500 feet, 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, 5,000 feet above sea level, that means that if you're an evolutionist, you would have to have the oceans rise, go up and cover the continents or parts of the continents 500 feet, 300 feet, 600 feet, but 18 different times. Because the oceans can't just stay up. Otherwise, that would be just a worldwide flood. That's Noah's flood. But there's land animals mixed in with these creatures. And so that would have to be, the ocean would come up to 500 feet, according to evolution, and have to go back down 500 feet above sea level. And these layers are so high up, it's very difficult to try to explain to us how you would have 18 worldwide floods. 18 times the oceans rose up 500 feet. You know, I have a hard time believing in Noah's flood. Where did the water come from? Where did it go? How do you get all this? You know, that's very difficult. But in even more crazy than Noah's flood is that you would have to believe in 18 floods where the ocean rose 500 feet and went back down. Now, the rule of parsimony would say the simplest thing is it was just one flood, and these were all these layers were laid down because of the one flood, and that's why there's salt water mixed with fresh and land animals. But the evolutionists would not they'd have to start saying, well, during the Eocene, yeah, the saltwater ocean came up again 500 feet to get to Wyoming. You know, during the Jurassic, the ocean have to come up to, you know, Colorado, you know, 1,000 feet. That's impossible. You think about this concept, and you should then abandon evolution. You really should.
Well, I think sometimes they'll say it's from uplift. Like, let's say, why do we find marine fossils on Mount Everest? It's because it was uplifted. That sediment was uplifted from the ocean. But the problem with that too is, why is it still there? If you say Mount Everest has been there 50 million years and it still has marine sediments on the top, why is that still there? That should have been eroded away long ago.
Well, let's just take out uplift. Let's say there's no uplift, and let's say all these fossils are found 50 feet above sea level. Just make it no uplift. Then you still have the same problem. The creationists would say there was one flood that explained all 18 layers, and that's how the salt water got above 50 feet above sea level. But the evolutionist is going to have to raise the sea level above 50 feet from sea level 18 different times. Well, I can barely get the explanation out for Noah's flood, but how about you? How are you going to explain this 18 different times that the ocean rose more than 50 feet? That's impossible. That is like the medical student who said the patient had an aspirin overdose, a blood pressure pill overdose, a blood clot, and suddenly developed emphysema to make your explanation. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of questions here. So Nestleg says, what would we expect the same according to evolution? If not, why not? So he's asking about the why we wouldn't find animals, saltwater animals, in all the layers.
Because you would have to, because there's land animals in all these layers, so you would have to have the ocean rise 18 separate different times. And I want you to explain to me how that happened 18 different times. That is crazy to raise it up 50 feet would even be crazy, 18 different times. But you have to do it not 50 feet. It's 600 feet. Like Missouri is 600 feet. We have saltwater creatures all over Missouri. So you have to explain it, and you go ahead and we're listening. Explain how the oceans rose that many times to get up to deposit these saltwater creatures in the middle of the continents in all these separate layers,
And this is a perfect question, because this is what I've been challenged on with regard to your work, with what you've found in the layers, and then more generally just the fossil record as it is. So the question is, is Dr. Werner aware of any cases of mammalian fossils in Cambrian rock?
The old rabbit in a Cambrian. And who was it that said that if he was an evolutionist, he said, if you could find a rabbit in the Cambrian layer, then I would believe that creation is true. I'm working on my insulin pump here, so excuse my my inattention.
Yeah, no problem. And so, okay, I think you're going to answer, we haven't found any mammal fossils in the Cambrian, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
But I want to go beyond that, because this has been one of the major challenges. And I even said, like, I loved your video series and your books. It really showed me how there's tons of, all different types of animals in the layers with the dinosaurs. But the one area that felt pretty weak, and that I've been challenged on repeatedly, is the modern mammals. Why don't we find modern mammals with the dinosaurs? And I did do a thing on the Ashley phosphate bed. So that's one potential place where we even see a mammoth, possibly with a dinosaur. People can watch that video if they want. But in general, we're not seeing a lot of the modern mammals with the dinosaurs. So I'd love to hear what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I love the hard questions and the probing questions and questions, I got you questions, because that's what makes us all smarter, when we challenge each other. So you're saying, why don't we find an elephant, a rhinoceros, and a lion with the dinosaur fossils?
Right.
And yeah, and I'd like to address that. And that would be addressed in my last book, if I ever get to it before I die, the geological column. But first of all, they do find modern mammals with the dinosaurs. They found possums, echidnas, duckbill platypus, something about 25 pounds that looks like a Tasmanian devil. So they do, and a possum. They do find mammals, but they don't find all mammals. They do find some mammals, but it's not the big ones. And here's one possible explanation I have that I think explains it. I wish it was stronger. I agree with you. The evidence should be stronger, but this is how I think it would work out. You're an evolution scientist. You get called to a dig site. It's not a dig site yet. Someone just found a bone. It is a large mammal bone, a elephant bone, a rhinoceros bone, whatever you want. And they look to you and say, well, what is it? Well, it's a large mammal. It's probably, a mastodon or something. Well, how old is it? And you calculate in your mind, well, the large mammals came in the Cenozoic late, 30 million, 20 million, 10 million years old. It's 10 million years old. So this isn't like the dinosaur times. This is the much later than the dinosaur times. And then you start doing dating of that layer, and you keep dating it till you get a result that agrees with your idea. And you just turned a possible proof for creation into a proof for evolution, because you're using the theoretical construct of the geological column that large mammals didn't come until later. Now, see, my living fossils challenge was that, look, we got 1 billion fossils. you can only hide these so much. If there was creation and a flood, there should be modern animals and plants in the dinosaur layers. I didn't say large mammals, but I said, eventually you're going to find something. And we did find something, these hundreds of examples. But because of the construct of the geological column, when someone comes to a bed of large mammals, and if he's an evolutionist, he's going to say it's, Eocene, Oligocene, Miocene, and he's just disproved it. And if he had evidence against that to say, oh, maybe here's a fossil fish that's normally found in the dinosaur layer, they wouldn't then say, oh, well, these are large mammals from the dinosaur layer. No, they stick with the construct of evolution and the geological column. So it would be very difficult to disprove that. But if you look at the fossil count of what's been collected, which is 1 billion with a B, 1 billion fossils have been found. How many of those fossils are invertebrates? It's around 970, 960, 980 million. In other words, practically every fossil you find is an invertebrate. And then there are some vertebrate fossils we have. I think I'm going to pull these from mine. It might not be accurate, but there's 100,000 dinosaurs have been found. I think it's 250,000 birds. The other amphibians and vertebrates. They're very few. They're just a few millions of them. And so you're not going to find every large vertebrate with another large vertebrate. The odds of that is very low. And so you have to assemble these animals into a structure in your mind, how it goes. And you can't go by dating because they can make the dating system work for whatever answer they want. And so every time they find a large mammal, they're going to say, this is not dinosaur. This is after the dinosaur. But you should find something that's modern if creation is true, creation flood is true, and you find hundreds and hundreds of animals and plants. So it's not a perfect, I wish they would find like a elephant bone next to a dinosaur, but they have workarounds that they can dismiss it. One other thing is if they find a bone next to a bone or a fossil next to a fossil and it's in the wrong layer, they can say it was, quote, reworked and say, well, this fossil shouldn't be here, but we're going to dismiss it because it was probably came down from a stream from an older layer. And then when this animal died, these two older and newer got mixed together, but we're going to not even mention it in the papers. We won't even bring it to your attention. We won't even tell you about it, but they can dismiss animals that are in the wrong layers by saying, oh, they had to be reworked. So it's not perfect. I wish I had a picture of a dinosaur next to an elephant bone. I don't, but 99% of this is pretty sure you got a whole book worth of modern animals next to dinosaurs, including mammals,
Right. And I think you mentioned the number of extinct animals versus living animals, because like something like 99% of all animals who have ever lived are now extinct. So when we look at the fossil record and we're seeing that, hey, so many animals that we've never experienced here on Earth, it's because the fossil record is characterized by extinction, right? So
that's right. Which was a good segue, Rebecca. Could you put the slides back up? Because
sure.
This is the last 5 minutes of my presentation that I gave to somebody else. It's three segments. And here's my question to the audience. How many extinct animals should we find in each of the rock layers if there was a one-time creation and flood? In other words, should extinct animals be hardly ever there, or should extinct animals be a lot of them in each of these layers? And so I'm going to ask you, while I'm taking care of my blood sugar issues here, how many extinct animals should you find in the rock layers if creation was true? Because we know there's extinct animals in all these layers, right? But if creation was true, how many should be in there?
Well, I don't know that I could put a number on that, and I don't see anybody else chiming in. So
Well, I'm
I
going to
think
give you a concept. I'm going to give you a concept to answer this. And it's very simple. Again, the rule of parsimony. This is so stupidly simple that explains the whole fossil record. An evolutionist would say the following, and you've read this: 99% of all animal and plant species that have ever lived on the earth have gone extinct, right? You've heard that, right? Now, they would say that these extinctions were from a series of asteroids and, global catastrophes and like 5 different asteroid events and, climates warming and cooling and all this. And they would say that there was extinction events all through there. But if you add them, all the animals up, they would say 99% of all animal and plant species that have ever lived on Earth have gone extinct. Now, I don't know if I believe that, but it really goes to my favor. So I'm going to go with it. Okay. 99%. Now, the evolutionists think that they went extinct because of, 40 different events, asteroids and global warming, global cooling, things like that. But a creationist would say that the animals went extinct because of the flood and because of the global cooling in the ice age right after the flood. So they would say, a creationist would say, yeah, 99% of all animals have gone extinct, but it was from the flood event and the ice age from the flood. So that in every layer, you should find 1% modern animals and 99% extinct animals. If you go to any layer, the ratio of extinct animals to modern animals should be 99-1. Do you see where I'm getting that from?
Yes.
From their figure, 99% of all animals have gone extinct. So you should be able to go down to the Cambrian layer and find, for each modern animal in the Cambrian, you should find 99 extinct animals. And that's exactly what you find, by the way. I'm not exactly, but when you look at the numbers, that's about what you find. And when you go up to the Jurassic layer, where there's more fossils, for every modern animal, like the duck in the Cretaceous, you should find 99 extinct animals, like extinct birds, extinct reptiles, adosaurs, phytosaurs, all these things. And that is very close to what I observed when I went to these layers. The modern animals were few, and this is why people got tripped up believing in the evolution. They ignored the modern animals and renamed them. But if you really think about it, you should expect, if there was a flood and if it was a creation, you should expect to find a modern animal in every layer, a saltwater animal in every layer, which there is, which I just showed you, and that the ratio of modern to extinct animals in every layer should be 99-1, which is about what you see. It would have the appearance of evolution because of the extinction, but it's not. And it would be the prediction of the flood model, and that would be checkmate on evolution. That's checkmate on evolution. It's just what we just predicted: saltwater, modern, and extinct. And that's exactly what you find.
And not only that, but there's other problems for evolution with what we see in the fossil record, namely that we have the sudden appearance of forms.
Oh.
So you don't have this slow progression of wings. You have sudden appearance of wings for mammals, sudden appearance of wings for insects, sudden appearance of wings for birds. So it's, there's many other features that just suddenly appear. So, and I know you have a lot to say on that topic too. So I'll let you comment if you want to.
Yeah. And, for the audience, we're just taking one teeny bitty slice here of the problems with evolution. One teeny slice. I mean, you got 24 hours, we could do it. We could cover the whole evolution thing, and we're just doing this little thing. But like Rebecca said, according to evolution, these complex eyes had to evolve 23 different times. 23 different lineages of animals developed eyes. Wow, that's pretty hard to believe, and like you said, there's wings on pterosaurs, which are reptiles, wings on bats, which are mammals, wings on insects, wings on birds, and yeah, the fossil record does not show the slow progression of one animal changing into the other, which Darwin predicted. And it's been more or less agreed on by even the leading evolutionists that the fossil groups suddenly appear. The sudden appearance of dinosaurs, the sudden appearance of pterosaurs, the sudden appearance of bats, and the sudden appearance of all 7 phylum in the Cambrian explosion. Yeah, no, evolution's over. Everybody should say yippee and get up on your roof and cheer and say the theory is collapsed.
Now, there's someone that has a critical comment, Dr. Joel Duff, who is an evolutionary biologist, but has done a lot of work in geology. And he says when he talks, it's as if he doesn't know anything about geology. Sorry, frustrating to listen to such nonsense. Does he really not know the answer to this? Not that is shocking. Okay. I guess he was typing fast. Okay. But, I don't think Dr. Werner's expertise is in geology, right? So he may have said some things that are not quite right for geology.
Well, but before we go there, I would like Joel to, you're just saying that the whole lecture was crazy. So why don't you give out some specifics of where I'm wrong? Because I want to hear them, Joel. I really do. Not just as generalization as he's crazy, he's stupid, he doesn't know this. What specific criticism do you have? Because I think the audience should hear them. If you have these criticisms, we should all hear them, especially me.
Thank you so much. And so we'll give him a minute to see if he responds to that.
Just do 2 or 3. We don't want to do the whole.
He did say this. He said species go extinct every year, not just because of some dramatic event, and we agree with that.
Yeah.
So there's no contradiction in anything that Dr. Werner said with the idea that species are still going extinct. And Dr. Joel also said, I've collected fossils in Cambrian rocks, looks at thousands of fossils last summer, and there were no modern organisms. They are all extinct.
Joel, I just showed you that bristleworm that's on display at this Cambrian display at the Smithsonian. I don't know if you were here for a part of that or not, but that was a modern appearing bristleworm. Here we are. That was found in the Cambrian. So you have to. Here's the deal, Joel. If your eyes are set for evolution, everything you see is going to be evolution. And my eyes are set when I look at fossils for critiquing evolution. So I'm looking. So you wouldn't catch these things because you're not looking to critique your theory. But if you go back to the Smithsonian, to these 500 fossils on the wall, there are the 1,000, and you will see modern appearing animals in this collection. Here's one, and I don't have the others up, but there's sponges, that look like modern sponges, and then there's jellyfish that look like modern jellyfish. So I would ask you, it's going to be hard. It's going to be not apparent. And you would have to just be, intellectually honest, go through the collection up at the Smithsonian and see if there's any animal that you could say, gosh, this is kind of similar to modern. And then ask yourself, how similar? Is it as similar as 2 dogs or 2 sassafras leaves or 2 oysters or any variety of any species? And all of a sudden they'll start popping out. So I would appreciate you helping us, and you can be the doubting Thomas, which I'm the biggest doubting Thomas. You won't beat me, Joel, but you help us and you see if you can't find some more and document them for us. And then unfortunately you'll have to then come up with a rescue device to say, well, this is what I expected. but that's not what the theory predicted. The theory predicted there be no modern animals in all the layers,
And we actually did cover this earlier, but I don't think Dr. Joel was here at that time.
I think so
But he
too.
says modern appearing is not the same as modern. Look alike is not the same as proving they are modern. But so we would like to know, how are you finding out that they are not? Are you, because really, what else can you go on with the fossils? How are you showing that they are not, even though they look exactly the same? How are you showing that they're not modern?
And part of me thinks we should send Joel back to, I think he missed the first half of the lecture because we're kind of rehashing this whole discussion. But part of me thinks we should ask him to watch the show when it's done, because the modern appearing was addressed already. That was the basis of the first half of the lecture.
Right. And so the claim that these are not the same animals, even though the fossils look exactly the same as the modern ones, there should be some evidence for that claim. And that is, just saying it's named something different is not evidence for that claim.
That's right. And just because a scientist says it's different does not. In fact, let me do one. I'll do one for Joel. If you go to I'll put that slide up. An evolutionist questioned this, that I said these two fossils, the fossils Nautilus from the dinosaur era and the modern Nautilus from modern, look the same, and they should be named the same genus, Nautilus, and the same species, Pompilius. And the scientist, I don't know if it was Joel or somebody else, made a YouTube, comeback on me and said, if you just look up this species in the database, they will tell you why it's named a different species. And then, then this evolution scientist then reads the description in the video. The reason they named this different was because the tube, which is a soft tissue that expands and closes when the pressure is up or down, the siphuncle was bigger on the fossil. You got to be kidding. The soft tissue is what made this scientist put it in a different genus, not even the same species, I mean, a totally different genus. So you can argue, but I tell you what, 99% of the people in the audience are going to just be shaking their head like you're nuts. If you want to call those things two different things, if you want to say evolution occurred between these two Nautiluses, go ahead. I mean, no one's going to stop you, but I think everyone's going to look and cross-eyed and say, come on, this is too much, it's way too much, especially when you look at the variation within any living species. And let me see if I can find that real quick. I don't know where the dog one is, but if you look at the dog skulls, modern dog skulls look the same as the extinct, as from each other. They look different from each other, even though they're the same species. So anyway, I don't want to beat a dead horse.
Yep. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Werner. And so for those who are watching, today we're just talking about the fossil record, and we're not even covering everything that should be covered on the fossil record to show why evolution is false. But there are so many problems with evolution. Evolution is an absurd theory scientifically. So I just challenge anyone, if you are still believing in evolution, really think about it. Think about your reasons. Why do you believe in evolution? And just pay attention to what science actually shows in regard to those things. And don't just believe everything that's told you, like evolution is a fact. Evolution is a fact. That is, evolution survives because people just believe what they're told. So, Dr. Werner, do you have any other thoughts that you wanted to share?
Yeah, and I totally am so appreciative that the evolutionists are here. And if I sound sharp, I don't mean to sound sharp. And the thing is that I have lived on both sides of this fence. See, I believed in evolution while I was in medical school. And then because someone showed me 3 problems with evolution and naturalism, I abandoned it. The problems were so big, that you couldn't circumvent them, And so if somebody presents to you a piece of information that you can't get around, you're just making excuses for, you need to step back and say, why are all these people just bad mouthing this theory? It's so clear to me. But maybe just step back and say, why are they bad mouthing the theory? And it's because it doesn't work. And I believed it. I was converted in a pizza parlor over 3 questions. How could life form naturally from chemicals in a primordial soup if DNA, proteins, and enzymes don't form naturally in a mixture of chemicals under any circumstance, even though DNA, proteins, and enzymes are in every living cell, organism, animal, plant, and yet they can't form? And then how could the universe come about naturally, since the first law of thermodynamics says that the matter and energy cannot form from nothing? So how could the universe form naturally in an atheistic, naturalistic way? If energy and matter cannot form, how could the universe have started? And the third question he asked me over pizza was, with so many fossils collected, and the number is now 1 billion, why are these clear groupings between animals and not one animal changing into another, the bacteria into the fish, the mouse or whatever, tree shrew into a bat, the lizard into a pterosaur? Why don't we see all those if we have so many of these fossils? Those 3 questions were enough for me to think it over. And I realized there's no answer to those questions. There's no answer logically. And I was like, okay, you got me. I couldn't explain everything, but it was enough for me. So I'd encourage you, just consider abandoning your theory. It's just, that's what you should do as a scientist. You come up with a theory, you go with it, and you find evidence against it. You should abandon it as fast as you can so you can get on with science. If you just hold on to a dead theory, you're going to just go down to the grave just believing something that's not true. So be Carl Werner, be doubtful, and be willing to change. That's the hard part. That's the very hard part.
And that's what I love about you too, is that you are skeptical and you are willing to take criticism. And so people are coming here and they're criticizing. And I've heard accusations, these creationists are liars. And I've even heard you called a liar.
Oh my gosh.
I want to challenge the people who have said that to actually confront Dr. Werner with your accusation.
With specifics.
Right. With specifics, because he is very willing to listen to your criticism. And if he's wrong, then he'll change his perspective. I've even heard him offer to change his book if something is wrong in his book. So, it's possible he could be wrong about some things. And if he is, then he'll change. But please heed his call to you to really challenge and be skeptical. And for me, if you're a person who says you're skeptical, if you say I'm a skeptical person, if you still just fully believe in evolution, I can't believe you. I cannot believe that you have been skeptical, because you would understand the problems with evolution. So I hope you will choose to be skeptical of what you have believed thus far. So did you want to say something else, Dr. Werner?
No, skepticism is great. It's the beginning of knowledge. It's amazingly good. It's amazing. But Rebecca's point is good. If you're just skeptic of other things other than what you believe, well, then you're not really being an honest person, really, because you should be criticizing your own ideas 10 times harder than other people's ideas, and always trying to find where you're wrong, But if you're only criticizing, let's just say you're an atheist and you're only criticizing evolution or creation, it might be because you just hate God and, you just don't want to give up your marijuana and, your adultery or something. I don't know. But we all have to be honest with ourselves and say, let's do an honest inward assessment of the science that we believe in. And Carl Werner says there's gaps in all the science throughout evolution. Okay, well, what is this gap? So let me see if I can find what the gaps are, and I'll provide an answer for the skepticism. But then you have to be willing to take that last step when you find out that you come to a wall on any given point. And I just gave you 3 walls today. You have to say, you have to be willing to do what a Carl Werner did in that pizza parlor and saying, I don't want to cuss, but shoot, he got me. I'm wrong. And you have to be willing to take that last step. And that's the hardest step. But I'm telling you, it's so freeing when you do. You don't have to commit to the other theory. Just, you have to be willing to say, I'm going to abandon my theory. And then that's just the beginning,
And I think you've said before that you didn't want God. You were afraid to take that step to God. Once you realized it was that the evolution wasn't true. And you said this, that I had been duped about this worldview. It was still hard to take a step toward God. But what did you find when you took that step?
Well, see, I knew, I don't mean to be talking on, but I knew, because my parents were religious, especially my mother, and my sister was religious. I knew darn well that if I believed in creation, that I would have to believe in God. And I knew what God would do if I believed in God. Number one, he'd make me give up all the things I enjoy, which I didn't want to do that. And then, because I was already a physician or was in medical school, he was going to send me to India to care for the poor, or he was going to send me to Timbuktu in Africa and, take care of leprosy patients, because that's what Christian doctors are supposed to do. And I don't want any part of that, And I eventually gave up. I was like, I have no other choice. But once I did say, okay, God, okay, I quit. I'm going to believe in you. There's no other real possibility. I believe in you. So whatever, send me to India, send me to Timbuktu. And you know what he did? He gave me the greatest life in the world. I mean, he didn't send me to India or Timbuktu. He sent me where I would want to go. He sent me to diving on the Great Barrier Reef and snorkeling all over the world, and just the rainforest, and the greatest life any human being, in my opinion, could ask for. So it really wasn't all drudgery. Yes, I had to give up some things, and but they were replaced by, they were all junk. Everything I was holding on to was junk in retrospect. And everything I got was just awesome,
Yep. I try to tell people, for me, God is the best thing in life, best person in life, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
Best being, the best part of my life. All of my best experiences are my experiences with God.
Yeah.
And I just credit him with, of course, life itself and everything. But you're in for a beautiful experience by having God in your life, working with you, being in relationship with him. And so anyway, you really don't have anything to lose.
Right. No, you have a ton of stuff to gain. You're going to lose a bunch of loser friends. You're going to lose a bunch of stuff that doesn't really make you happy if you really examine it, and you're going to just have, good things. Christmas dinners with your family, Thanksgiving dinners with your family, not up to your ears in debt, not full of anxiety, the ability to love, have a fleshy heart, all that comes with the package. So, go for it, man. The gold's right there.
Yep. And it's really easy. God did all the work. Jesus lived a sinless life. He died on the cross for your sins. That sounds strange to people. How does one man dying on a cross help me? But that is what he did. It was enough for the sins of the whole world. It was enough for your sins. And just as he was resurrected on the 3rd day, he also wants you to share in that destiny. And he said, whoever believes in him will not perish, but will have everlasting life. So that is what's being offered to you right now. It's the gift God is offering to you. God is presenting you. He says, look, I took care of it all that stuff that you know you've done that's wrong. I took care of it. You know, death, you know how you're heading for death. You know that's coming, right? You know you're going to lay in the grave, right? Guess what? I took care of it. I've taken care of all of that, and put your trust in me. I'll raise you up. I'll raise you up and you'll live forever with me. And all he's asking you to do is just trust to receive that gift. You know, he can offer the gift all day, but if somebody offers me a gift and I say, no, thanks, I'm not getting the gift, right? So you need to receive the gift. And the way that you receive is just trust in him. Believe what he said he's going to do. God, thank you that you promised me eternal life. I accept it, and I receive. Lord, I'm trusting you to take care of it all of my sin, all of that, and I receive this promise. And you know, you get in the car with him, just like you trust in your Uber driver. When you get in the car, you get in the car, let Jesus drive, and it'll be, you know, like I said, it doesn't hurt a bit. It's very easy. God did all the work, so you have nothing to lose. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Thank you for all that, you know, for all your participation. We appreciate all the comments. Again, welcome challenges. And so welcome your comments on this stream. Thank you so much, Dr. Werner, for this stream, but also for what you spent your life doing. It's very valuable to me that you did all the hard work, the groundwork, going and interviewing. So thank you so much. And let me also just again say, this book, Living Fossils, is on the topic that we talked about today. It's excellent, and it's not that much reading. It's a lot of pictures to actually show you what is there in the fossil record and the modern animals. And you can get the links to all of Dr. Werner's work, the video series, all the books. It's in the description of this video. It's at the top of the chat. So check it out. It is very well worth your time.
Thank you for that plug, Rebecca.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. God bless you, everyone.
Bye-bye.